exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced and get happy with Dr. Marissa every Tuesday at naturally high noon Pacific Standard Time here out of the UBN Go studios in Burbank, California. And then on my syndicated CNBC NBC channel, KCAA, Saturdays at 6, Mondays at 6 p.m. And that's AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and on demand anytime on iHeartRadio. And this show is about hope and happiness. So there's no gossip, no scandal, and no K words, no Kardashian talk at all, no Kanye talk too. Instead, I want you to focus on your own reality show and how you can be happy 88% of the time. So I have shows and topics to that end. If you missed any of my fabulous past, Fran Drescher talking about how to prevent cancer, Dawn Wells, Marianne from Gilligan's Island, Corey Feldman, Happy Days, Marion Ross, the beautiful 91-year young. You just go to my YouTube, and it's a free subscribe, and you'll get all of those past shows that you can watch. Today is my birthday show. I'm ageless, so don't ask how old I am. But yesterday, my guest actually sang happy birthday to me, and I'm so delighted. I always want the best to come for my birthday show, and this year is no exception. I have Jane Elliot, internationally known teacher, lecturer, diversity trainer, and recipient of the National Mental Health Association Award for Excellence in Education. She exposes prejudice and bigotry for what it is, an irrational class system based on purely arbitrary factors. And if you think this does not apply to you, you're in for a rude awakening and a nice awakening today on the show. She's been on Oprah, Jimmy Fallon, a month ago, Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talk, and I'm honored now to welcome her to the Asian Oprah stage. Jane Elliot, you are a hero to me. I met you probably 20 years ago with your Class Divided Frontline PBS show that was life-changing for me. As a diversity consultant, I used the clip, the brown-eyed, blue-eyed, the collars, and it really is a landmark, life-changing experiment that you did to teach children about racism. So as painful as it might be to go back, if people who don't know your 86-year young history of talking about this amazing, important topic, just tell us why have you spent a lifetime trying to eradicate racism?
Well, I haven't spent a lifetime trying to do that. What I've spent a lifetime doing is trying to stay alive. Number two, you need to know that I didn't do an experiment with my children. People like to use the word experiment because it sort of puts a lie to everything I did. And when you do an experiment, you're trying to lose something from your subject. You learn something from your subject. I wasn't trying to learn something from those kids. I was trying to teach them something. What I did was what Adolf Hitler did. And if you listen very carefully, you'll realize that what I did in my classroom and what Adolf Hitler did from 1933 to 1945 is exactly what is happening in the United States of America right now. And you need to be aware of that. And most people aren't. They don't see it that way. That they don't remember the Hitler years the way I do. The day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, and I don't like to talk about that because it makes me sick to my stomach, because I remember how it felt when I found out that he'd been shot. After I found out that he had been shot, we were learning the Indian unit at that time. And the next morning, we were supposed to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." I decided while I was watching the brilliant, the erudite, the sophisticated people, members of the press that night, members of the reporters, asking questions of members of the leaders of the Black community, things like, when our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line? I found that an absolutely insensitive and unacceptable question, because JFK wasn't the leader only of white folks. He was the leader of all of us. And yes, his young widow kept us in line, but that didn't mean it was because we were so civilized. It was because it was a horrible thing to kill a white man. And he also said to them, what are your people going to do? What are your people going to do? You see, I thought that Black people were my people, and it really made me angry that he would put that kind of thought in my head or the heads of anybody else listening to him. So I changed the channel. And there was another one of our famous commentators, and he said to three leaders of the Black community, don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the anger at this killing that you Negroes can? And at that point, I rolled up the teepee that I was ironing in preparation for putting it up in my classroom the next day. I threw it into the closet, I shut the door on it, and I decided at that moment that not only was I going to teach my children the Sioux Indian prayer that says, oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins. I was not only going to teach them that, I was going to arrange to have it answered for them. Because I decided at that moment that the next morning I would separate my students according to the color of the eyes, because that's one of the ways Hitler decided who went into the gas chamber. If you had a good German name, but you had brown eyes, they thought you might be a Jewish person who was trying to pass. And so they threw you into the gas chamber. I didn't invent this exercise. I learned it from watching what happened in Germany and all over Europe from the time I was born in 1933 until the end of the Second World War in 1945. I'm not talking out of my head here. I'm talking about what I remembered. I decided that the next morning, because I'm blue-eyed and most of the students are blue-eyed in that classroom, I would put blue-eyed people on the bottom because I didn't want the power structure to be with the out group. So I put with the in group. So I put the blue-eyed people on the bottom, the brown-eyed people on the top. I didn't know how this exercise would work. If I had known how it would work, I wouldn't have said the prayer that I said that night and every night. I said, oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Oh my God. And the next morning I found out that I had created something that was going to give me nothing but peace for a very long time. Because I went into my classroom the next day, and Stephen Armstrong, the first little third grade student, came in and said, hey, Elliot, they shot that king last night. Why'd they shoot that king? I said, we're going to talk about that, Stephen. So after we had done the things you have to do first thing in the morning, first we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag with the words under God in it, which do not belong there. We turned that Pledge of Allegiance into a prayer. We're supposed to have separation of church and state. We aren't supposed to pray in school, but we put those, Dwight Eisenhower, some congressmen were lobbied, and they lobbied Dwight Eisenhower to get those words added to the pledge. They don't belong there. And when Colin Kaepernick refused to stand for the pledge, he was reacting to that and to the last lines of the Star Spangled Banner, which says, oh, say does that Star Spangled Banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. And he knew who the free were, and he knew who the brave are in this country. After we said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, then we sang God Bless America. So we broke the laws twice, according to the Constitution. And then we started to talk about the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. And I asked those kids what they knew about Black people, because none of these kids had ever been in the presence of a person of color. And those kids knew every negative stereotype I had ever heard about Black people, and some that I never heard of. And I finally said, look, how do you kids know these things are true? And almost in a chorus, they said, because my dad said so. Fathers, and if you're men who are going to be fathers someday, be careful of what you say around your children, because they'll come to school to a person like me, and they'll repeat those remarks, and I'll know something about you that you don't want me to know, which is that you're a blatant, ignorant racist. Nobody but a blatant, ignorant racist would say the kinds of things that those good white Christian people were saying to their children at home over the dinner table. And we have to put a stop to this.
Yes.
I was shocked at what I learned that day. Blue-eyed people were on the bottom. I told the blue-eyed people to put their chairs, their desks in the back of the room. Brown-eyed people are going to be in the front of the room. And I said, here's the way it is. Blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people. They aren't as clean as brown-eyed people. They aren't as civilized as brown-eyed people. You give blue-eyed people something nice, and what do they do with it? That said, they tear it up. They don't know any better. They don't take good care of things. And at that point, little brown-eyed Debbie sitting in the front row in that classroom looked up at me and said, how come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes? And I thought, oh my God, there it is. There it is. This 9-year-old child now feels free and confident to challenge me, as even though I'm her teacher and 24 years older than she is, she has the power now to challenge me because she has the right color eyes and I don't.
Wow.
I thought, good Lord, where did she learn that? I know where she learned that. She learned that from the significant adults in her environment, and I'm one of them. She learned her racism from me. She learned how to be a racist from me. And then Alan Moss, blue-eyed Alan Moss, in the back row stuff and said, Debbie, you know she doesn't have, Debbie, if she didn't have those blue eyes, she'd be the principal or the superintendent. They're both brown-eyed. And I thought, there it is again.
Wow. That's
He's defending me, not as his teacher, but as a member of his race. This is insane. What's going on here?
right.
And
So
all of a sudden I
quickly.
realized what's going on here. What's going on here is racism that has been learned pre-birth, and we continue to teach it until after you're dead. I was absolutely amazed at what happened in my classroom that year. I had taken all the courses about expectations. I know that if you expect more from a child, you'll get more from a child. I knew nothing. On that day, when those brown-eyed kids were on the top in that exercise, that I had 4 dyslexic boys, brown-eyed boys in my classroom that year. On the day they were on the top, those brown-eyed boys read words I knew they couldn't read, and they spelled words I knew they couldn't spell.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, Billy Thompson, brown-eyed Billy Thompson, came up to my desk and said, Miss Elliot, where's my spelling paper? I said, what do you want it for, Billy? He said, I want to take it home and show it to my mother. She thinks I can't spell, and I can. And at that point, he was crying, and so was I, because he didn't know until April 5th of his 3rd grade year that he could spell.
Wow.
And I didn't know that he could either, because he had been living down to my expectations of him. And I based my expectations of him on the kinds of things that his previous teachers said about him and his older brother and his father. In the teacher's lounge of the Riceville Elementary School, I was just shocked, amazed, and ashamed, absolutely ashamed.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I had in my classroom that year a little brown-eyed, no, blue-eyed Carol, the Lutheran minister's daughter, came into my classroom in February reading at the 6th grade level. For a 3rd grader, that's pretty high level. She was absolutely brilliant. She hadn't multiplied before. I taught her how to multiply the first 15 minutes of math class. She never made a mistake in multiplication again until the day she had the wrong color eyes.
Wow.
And on that day, that brilliant, tall, blonde, pale-faced, gorgeous little so-called perfect example of the American girl made mistakes in reading, made mistakes in spelling. She forgot how to multiply. She came in from recess crying. I said, what's going on here? As she walked across the playground, 2 brown-eyed Debbies and a brown-eyed Cindy stepped up behind her. One of them reached up, struck her across the back with her forearm. And when Carol turned around, Debbie said to her, now you have to apologize to me for getting in my way because I'm better than you are.
Wow.
And Carol apologized and came into the room crying. Make no mistake about this. That would not have happened if I had not introduced racism based on eye color into my classroom. And the kinds of confrontations that you see between so-called white people and people of other color groups in this country would never have happened if we so-called white people, who are really just lighter skinned black people, faded blacks is what we are, if we had not invented racism, we would not have the problems we have in this country today. What you invent, what you create, you can destroy. We could destroy racism in 2 generations if we chose to, but we choose not to because it's a moneymaker. Now, I didn't really realize how ugly this was until I went down to the teacher's lounge at noon. I needed some support. I needed to tell the other 2 3rd grade teachers what was happening so that they could give me some assurance that I wasn't completely crazy.
Right.
I walked into the teacher's lounge. There were a number of teachers in the lounge, including those 2 3rd grade teachers, one of whom was about 52 at the time, and the other was over 60. I told them what was happening in my classroom the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. When I had finished talking, one of the younger of the 2 looked up at me and said, I don't know how you have time for all that extra stuff. It's all I can do to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, she hadn't taught reading, writing, and arithmetic yet. She might as well have done the extra stuff. The other one said, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. She looked at the group and then she looked at me and said, I don't know why you're doing that. I thought it was about time somebody shot that son of a bitch. And she didn't say SOB. She said, she said the whole thing. Nobody gasped. Nobody frowned. Nobody said, Helen, God is love. These are all good Christian women.
Wow.
Nobody said, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Nobody said to her, in so much as ye have done it unto one of these, my brethren, so have ye done it unto me. Not one of those teachers expressed any dissatisfaction with what she was saying. Every one of them either laughed or smiled and nodded because she had expressed their feelings perfectly. And as the most senior member of the group, she had the most right to do so. I went back to my classroom determined that no student of any age, no person of any age will ever leave my presence with that kind of attitude intact. I will confront them immediately, and it will not be pretty, and it will not be pleasant, and I will not accuse them of unconscious bias, and I won't accuse them of microaggression. I will accuse them of being blatant, ignorant racists. Now, racists aren't stupid. You can't fix stupid. They're ignorant, and you fix that with education. And at that moment, I decided that I was going to educate these students so that they would never make a statement like that again, and never tolerate, never put up with having somebody talk like that around them. And that's what I did. I went to at the end of the day, I sent the kids home. They were glad to leave. They had never been glad to leave my room before. In fact, several times they would say, couldn't we stay overnight? We could stay here tonight. We could sleep on the floor. This would be great. No, I said, no, we're going home. But that night, they were glad to go home and glad to get out of there. I went to my mother's hotel and told her what was happening in my classroom. She said, Jane, you better be careful. You don't want to end up where Aunt Eunice did. I said, where'd Aunt Eunice end up? She ended up in a mental institution because what I was describing sounded insane. Because what we do in this society on a daily basis about skin color is insane. It makes no sense. It is irrational. It is based on a lie. It is not based on a myth. It is based on a lie.
Right.
We had some unpleasant experiences that weekend. And then Monday, I dreaded going back to school because I had heard these little third grade boys say how they were going to get even with those brown-eyed kids. When the blue-eyed kids got on time, we're getting even with those brownies. So I thought, oh, this is going to be ugly. So I walked into the classroom, reversed the exercise, put blue-eyed people on top, brown-eyed people on the bottom. And the strangest, most wonderful thing happened. My blue-eyed students were much less vicious to the brown-eyed students than the brown-eyed student had been to them.
Interesting.
I didn't know whether it was because they had learned something. I didn't know whether they were just their friends and they didn't want to do it. I don't know whether they had talked it over with their parents during the evening and decided it wasn't a good idea. I don't know, but they were much less vicious than the brown-eyed students had been to them. So on Tuesday, before we discussed the exercise at all, every child had to write a 4-paragraph composition telling who Martin Luther King Jr. is, how the child felt on Friday, how the child felt on Monday, and what discrimination is. When they had finished reading, we got in the magic circle, and what you say in the magic circle is acceptable, and we'll deal with it. So I said to that group, you blue-eyed kids said you were going to get even with the brownies when you got on top. Why didn't you get even with them? And those kids almost once again in a chorus said, because I found out how it feels to be treated that way, and I didn't want to make anybody feel the way I felt the day I was on the bottom. Now, people who are pale faces, what we call white, and we aren't, because there's no such thing. Faded black folks, which is what you might refer to pale faces, because we all came from the same ancestors back there 300,000 to 500,000 years ago, and they were black. The only reason some of us have light skin is because those black people moved farther and farther from the equator so that they were exposed to less and less sunlight, so their bodies produced less and less melanin, so their skin, their hair, and their eyes got lighter. But their brains didn't get lighter and their brains didn't get smaller. So get over it. And I have here a mask, which I should be wearing and which I sometimes do when I go to town. See what it says?
Get over it.
Get over it. Get over it. Get over this ignorance. It's time to get over it. I was absolutely astounded at what those kids said during that little moment.
Yeah.
I learned more that day and the 2 days of that exercise than I ever learned before, and stuff that I will never forget as long as I live.
Absolutely. And if you've just tuned in and you're wondering who this very indirect person is, sarcasm is another service.
That's it.
This is the wonderful Jane Elliot, a teacher extraordinaire who has spent much of her life battling and trying to re-educate people when it comes to racism. You're tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get happy with Dr. Marissa. Every Tuesday at Naturally High Noon, a show about hope and happiness. And today it is my birthday show, and Jane Elliot is here, zooming in from Iowa to talk about how now let's just go to the get over it, because sometimes people say get over it to Black people who say, well, we were slaves and we came to this country against our will, and so it's not fair. And I've heard white people say, get over it. Like, that was then. I don't own slaves, so we're moving on. This is the 21st century. Get over it. So speak to that. The whole, Black Lives Matter.
That's what I want. That's what I want to do. Is I want white people to get over it. The first time I did this exercise, I did it with third graders. They called me and asked me to do the Johnny Carson show because there was an article in the paper about it. I went in and did the Johnny Carson show. Then, because of that, the local Rotarians asked me to come and speak to the Rotary. And then I did the exercise with adults. Adults, get over it. Some of the people who went through that exercise for an hour and a half, and they were only in the exercise for half an hour at a Rotary Club meeting. These were all the wheels in town. These are the important white males. Nothing but white males in that community. I put them through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. Some of them never got over it. Some of them, there was one older man who would see me on the street later, and if he was walking toward me and saw me, he'd turn around and cross the street just as fast as he could. Later, he was in a motorized wheelchair. He would turn his wheelchair around as fast as he could and almost get away from me as fast as he possibly could. My husband was invited. He became a member of an organization in that community, and we were invited to a card party so that all the members could meet us. And if they were introducing the men as they came in to me, and when this older man came toward the table, I said, I know you. He said, I know you too. I've never forgotten you, and I've never forgiven you, and I never will either. I said, what did I do? What's going on here? He said, I'm blue-eyed. I said, and you're a Rotarian. He said, yes, I am. I've never forgotten that. I'll never forget it. And I'll never be in the same room with you. And he charged away. And all those members were going, whoa, what's going on here? You see, 20 years before that, I put him through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. He never got over it.
And isn't it
White
interesting?
Folks, get over it.
But isn't it interesting that Blacks who have gone through a lifetime of this kind of discrimination are told to get over it, and white people who have gone through a half an hour of an exercise can't get over it? So the discrepancy.
But what's even more disgusting is every time I do this, the second time I did it with a group of adults, it was with the members of people in Canada, in Toronto, Canada. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation sent a film crew down to film my second group of third graders going through the exercise. They took that film to Canada. They edited it down to half an hour, threw it into a program about Eskimos. And at that time, they were calling Eskimos the N-word in parkas. And they threw that 30 minutes. Yeah. I heard a lot and I've seen a lot, and I'm angry at a lot. Anyway, they put that half hour of my third graders, my little white third graders, going through that exercise, and called me the next morning and said, you've got to get up here. I said, why? They said, because we've got an angry populace. They want to know what, and these are the words they used, what in hell you were doing with those poor little white kids in Riceville, Iowa. You have to come up here. So I went to Toronto. My luggage went to New York. I had to buy a dress to wear. I chose badly. I went into the studio, and there, through the observation glass, I looked out and I could see a kidney bean shaped dais on the floor with 3 chairs on it, and a semicircle, risers with probably 240 people on them. And I pointed at the dais and I said, what's that? And they said, that's where you're going to sit. I said, who are they? And he said, those are the people who have come here to question you. I said, this looks like a setup. He said, it is, let's go. And he took me by the arm and took me out and set me down on that one of those chairs. And he said, now this is Jane Elliot. Does anybody have any questions about what she did with her third graders in all white, all Christian Riceville, Iowa? Immediately, over 200 angry Canadians raised their hand and commenced to question me as to what I was doing with those poor little children. The first question, and I get this every time I do the exercise with a group of adults. The first question was a woman, I suppose she was a white woman. I suppose she was 38, 40 years old. And she said, how could you do that to those poor little children? Don't you realize that you could have traumatized them? You could have ruined them for life. I said, it's interesting that you asked that question. And if you're that worried about what happened to those little third graders in a classroom with one teacher when they knew it was going to be over at the end of the day, you think that could traumatize them. What do you suppose? I'm sure you must be very worried about what happens to children of color in your country and mine on a daily basis from birth to death. And she said, And these are her exact words. That's different. They're used to it. They can get over it.
Oh.
Now think about that. They're used to it. They can get over it. I have had that said to Black women who, at a major corporation in the United States of America, have gone through the exercise with blue-eyed people. And at the end of it, when we're doing the debriefing, a blue-eyed woman turns to the Black person and says, this was too harsh. We shouldn't have gone through this. And the Black woman says, what about us? We go through that every day. That's different. You're used to it. You can cope with it. No. If you think that little white children can't get over for it one day, you must think that Black children and brown children and those children of other color groups are absolutely.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, we made it further than we did last week. I know there's a storm coming through, Jane, and we'll continue this very important conversation on how racism continues to be an issue, and she does have a phone number to call in. So we will just go to break, which we were going to do in a couple minutes anyways, to thank the sponsor that made this show possible. And we will be back in 2 and 2. And remember, it's all about balance, peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace.
Hello.
Our world as we know it has changed.
Hate crimes against Asian Americans related to COVID-19 have increased significantly.
These crimes have grown out of unfounded fear, blame, and even ignorance.
We must face this challenge together and not let fear and hate divide us.
Our country was built on the foundations of tolerance and compassion for others.
These crimes go against the very principles we stand for and will not be tolerated.
Those responsible for committing these crimes will be held accountable for their actions.
We must stay strong during these challenging times and not let ignorance and fear tear us apart.
Together, we will not only stop this disease, but also stop the disease of racism.
Stand against hate.
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 And we're back. You're tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get happy with Dr. Marissa. This is a show about hope and happiness every Tuesday live at noon, broadcasting out of the UBN Go studios in Burbank, California, and then rebroadcasting with my CNBC KCAA channel, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, and on demand all the time on iHeartRadio. And today it is my birthday show, and I have the amazing and wonderful 86-year young Jane Elliot, who has been working very, very diligently to try to re-educate us when it comes to racism. Now, we have gone through what you did with the children and the reactions. I want to get a little bit personal. You did this at some cost to yourself, to your family, to your kids. This was, a very, as you said in the studio in Canada, people are angry that you tried to do this or that you did do this. What kept you going? Were you ever tempted just to say, you know what, this is like too much?
There's no going back. Once you've stepped in it, you're stuck in it. You can't just turn around, and good deeds will not go long unpunished. Make no mistake about that. I will never be known in that community for anything but the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. And 20% of the people in that community will continue to hate me because I challenged their ever so happily held beliefs in the brightness of whiteness. And for me to say to a group of third graders, and then to people of all ages and all colors and all stages, that there is no rightness to whiteness because there is no whiteness, is absolutely unacceptable. But they couldn't get to me, so they abused my kids. After I'd done it, 2 years after I did the exercise, maybe 3, the elementary principal's wife, who taught at the high school, came to me during a teacher's meeting and said, "Jane, get your kids out of this school." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because these teachers are trying to destroy your children." I had no idea at that time how ugly it got for my kids in classrooms at the hands of teachers who couldn't get rid of me because I could teach every child to read. And they later on, the reporters questioned the superintendent and said, "Why didn't you fire her? You could have fired her." And he said, "Because I knew what she was doing was right. How could I fire her for doing the right thing?" The teachers didn't feel that way about it. They were furious. And so I got my kids out of there, but I continued to teach there. They didn't get rid of the problem, but they got rid of the persons who were going to be victims because of my causing a problem. And the problem that I caused was, after that, when some teacher who had some of my previous third graders in a classroom would use the N-word, one of my kids, my former students, would stand up and say, "Mrs. K, if you're going to use that word, I'm going to go out in the hall until you get done doing it, because we don't use that word in this school anymore." That kind of courage those kids got as a result of going through that exercise for a day and realizing how ugly it is and how ugly it feels to be on the receiving end of it, and how ugly people sound who are expounding that kind of attitude and that kind of views. Teachers ought to learn either to educate or to get out of the field. See, I'm not a teacher, I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance, and you cannot do that if you teach that it was all right for us to end the Second World War by dropping atomic bombs on people who had not killed 11 million people in the previous years. That is not the way you teach the truth. That is not the way you teach people not to discriminate on the basis of skin color. To celebrate Columbus Day is as ridiculous as any of the other things we do. Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where people are already living. They discovered it before you got there. So it's that kind of thing that we're doing in the schools to this day that have to be stopped. We have to start teaching the truth. We have to start truly educating instead of indoctrinating students. We indoctrinate students when I was taking education courses, I was told to educate these students in a way that they will be good American students. No. Number one, America is everything from the northernmost point of Canada to the southernmost point of South America. All the people who live in those areas, all those countries, are Americans. North Americans, Central Americans, Latin Americans, South Americans. They're all Americans. We need to teach students how to be United States of American students, because we educate in a totally different way than the other countries do, just as they educate in a way that's good for their country. So that's what we do for ours. But each of them has a country by its own name. We call ours the United States of America. But when our presidents stand up and say, "God bless you and God bless America," and then one of them builds a wall on the southern border so that we can keep those brown-skinned people out, because he has said that brown-skinned people can't come in here, they reproduce too rapidly. You see, we don't really like all Americans. We just like United States of Americans, which is the United States. People seem to think that America is just those 48 contiguous states, Alaska, Hawaii, and the islands off the southeastern coast of the United States. It isn't. America is everything that I just told you.
Right.
The United States of America is it's just a little piece of all of that.
Yes.
And people need to realize that. And we won't realize it as long as we use the wrong maps. And if you haven't seen the Peters projection map, you need to take a look at it.
Okay. What's different?
Okay. Oh my God. I'm so glad you asked. Look at this. See this map?
Yes.
I think this is the map that you're accustomed to seeing. See Greenland hanging down like a great big ripe plum. And then here is, look at the size of Canada. It stretches from hell to breakfast. It's huge. And look at poor little South America down here. And on this map, the equator is 2/3 of the way down the map. Now, according to your social studies teachers, the equator divides the Earth into two equal parts, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, because hemi means half. Are you telling me that this much of the map is half of the map? Of course not, because it's not. Now, at the bottom of this map, and you may not be aware of this because you don't usually read the legend. Read the legend at the bottom of most of the Mercator maps, and it says, South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland.
Wow.
At the bottom of the Mercator map, it says South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland. Now, how can you use this map and tell the truth? You can't.
Wow.
Some people say, well, you can't put a spherical shape on a flat surface without that kind of distortion. Oh, yes, you can. Here is a new map. This is the Peters projection map. Look at the size of Greenland on this map. And then look at the size of South America.
Mm-hmm.
Greenland, South America,
Mm-hmm.
Canada. It makes sense to have Canada only the size that it is instead of the size that is. And on this map, the equator is halfway between the North Pole and the South Pole, which means it's in the right place.
Right.
This map is called the Peters projection map. Everybody could be using it in the schools today. You can get it from capital O, capital D, capital T, maps, maps.com. And if you do it now, you'll get a really good deal on it.
Sounds
We need
good.
to change the maps in the schools.
Yes.
The schools in Boston all have the Peters projection map in the classroom. Now, if they can do it in Boston, they can do it in Osage, and they can do it in Waterloo, and they can do it in St. Louis.
Yes.
And we can stop telling people that white countries, which are the largest ones on this, are the biggest and the most important and the most prominent. Now, you see, Mr. What's his name in the White House wanted to buy Greenland. He thought it was this big. Then somebody must have shown him another map and shown him it's only this big, leave it alone. So now he doesn't want to buy Greenland anymore, as far as I know. However, you need to realize that we teach ignorance deliberately in the schools in this country. Anybody who is using the Mercator projection map is miseducating their children. And now somebody's going to say, as some cartographer is going to say, you don't understand about maps. Maps are drawn from the perspective of the person drawing them, and they draw them from all different perspectives. Fine, that's okay. Draw it from your perspective, but don't draw a lie and then say this is the truth, because this isn't the truth.
Right.
And we need to stop using it.
Yeah. So what top 3 re-educating topics should we be charged with? As your listeners right now, you have the attention of all of us. What can we do to re-educate? And is it even possible to re-educate people who have decided that white is right and white is the most powerful, and that's our birthright to dominate, and everyone else needs to fall in line? Is it possible
Wait a
to
minute.
re-educate that?
Oh yeah. If I can do it with 9-year-olds, we could surely do it with 40 and
Okay,
5
good.
and 60 and 60-year-olds.
All
Are
right.
you telling me that 40, 50, 60-year-olds aren't as smart as 9-year-olds? If you are, then those 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds ought to go back to school, and they need to be re-educated. And that is exactly the problem. We need to re-educate people. We need to stop telling. There's a book that everybody should read. It's called The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman. And it tells you that it takes you through the whole thing and lets you know that there's only one race on the face of the earth, and that's the human race, and we're all members of it. And this whole idea of 3 or 4 different races started during the Spanish Inquisition, which was about between 500 and 600 years ago. People, get over it. Before that, people were just people of different colors, different nationalities, different cultures, different age groups. They were not different races. There's only one race. They came up with the idea of race that short a time ago. Now we could teach, you could, if we ever go back to school this year, parents should get copies of the Peters projection map and send them to school with their child and say, and get them large ones. Get the one that you hang on the wall. Have it laminated first, because if you don't, the teachers will make sure it gets torn before you have a chance to put it on the wall. So get it laminated and send those maps to school with your children and say, I want my children taught the truth about the size, the location, and the importance of the landmass on the face of the earth. And I also want them told the truth about who the first modern human beings were, and they were Black. And I also want my child to be told that and I want, when my kid goes to kindergarten and when my great-grandchild goes to kindergarten, I want the teacher to say to that great-grandchild, who is part Hispanic, everybody take out the white crayon out of your Crayola crayon box. Now take that white crayon and hold it against the back of your hand and see if it matches. And if it doesn't match the color of that crayon, then you aren't white. I want teachers to wear a white shirt on the first day of school and say, see the color of my shirt, kids? This is white. See my skin? This isn't white. See my hair? This is white. My skin isn't white. I want you all to know that there is no such thing as white. There are only shades of brown. And I want every teacher to get this and put it up in the classroom. You can get it in the National Geographic magazine for April of 2018. It is a 3 pages of people of different colors, and each of them has a name and a number underneath of them. The name is Pantone. These are the colors. You can find your skin color on the Pantone color wheel. Now you'll notice that none of the people on these pages have skin this color. Right. Because people don't come in this color. Because we all came from those first Black people who evolved in sub-Saharan Africa between 300,000 and 500,000 years ago. And there are some things that teachers have to stop saying. And parents need to tell them when they go to the school, the parents have to say to the teachers, I want you never to refer to my child as biracial, because neither his father nor I came from outer space. We are off from the planet Earth. Therefore, the child is not biracial. The father is Black, the mother is white, or the mother is Black, the father is white. But those are not different races. Those are different color groups. So in the future, instead of referring to people as biracial, we're going to refer to people as mosaic. A mosaic is an art form that is new and beautiful and made of many different elements and has no negative connotation. It's a good thing to be mosaic because practically every human being on the face of the earth is mosaic. Every one of us. You need to realize that. And you need to encourage teachers, because most of them, I'm sorry, aren't educators. Most of them teach the standard elementary curriculum without stopping to think, wait a minute, this was written in the 30s. I want people who are determined to continue to think that there are several different races on the face of the earth, to go back to the time when people believed that in the 15th and 16th century and live as we lived then. If you're not going to give up that language, if you're going to continue to use the language of those early centuries, then you need to travel the way they did then, be entertained the way they did then, communicate the way they did then. And if you're going to educate that way, then you have to do all the other things that they did in the 15 and 1600s. Right. I doubt that you're going to be very comfortable, but you will be living your beliefs and you'll be using the language that makes you happy. Now, it makes you happy, but it's a lie. You need to realize that only 25% of the population of the earth, 25% of the population of the earth is classified as white. And they aren't white.
Right. But they're also, can we ever get to that place, though, where our whole country and the whole slogan, Make America Great Again, it's one nation, it's the best nation, we're the American. Are we ever going to get to the place where we are the human race and all races are good and equal and wonderful? Is that even possible? I want to believe it is, but I also am known to be a little rose-colored. What? Okay.
That statement. The color of your skin is the result of your people's diet over thousands and thousands of years, and your eyes are the result of the sun hitting the earth at a different slant because of the area you were in. Forget it. Don't forget it. But don't be upset by it, and don't let somebody think it makes you less than. The Make America Great Again slogan came from Ronald Reagan, who said, we're going to make America great again. We're going to take us back to the 50s. Now, the 50s were great for white males. They weren't worth a damn for the rest of us. Right. Make no mistake about that. I don't want to go back to the 50s, and I don't want to go back to the 1600s. We are now in the 21st century. To say make America great again means let's go back to when men were men and women knew it and other people stayed in their place. That's not where I want to be, and that's not where this country needs to be. This country needs to be into the 21st century. Give up that nonsense that we used in the 21st century, unless all the men who are listening, if there are any, want to start wearing knee breeches and powdered wigs and buckles on their shoes and hose. And if you want to go back to that period, go ahead, go for it. And I want to see you walking down the street on something other than April Fool's Day. And women, go back to pantalettes and pantaloons. Get corsets so tight that you pass out when you try to walk. You will never be allowed to ride a horse again because women in that time weren't allowed to ride
Right.
horses unless they had a problem.
And
If you want to travel, you'll have to, let's go back there.
Yeah.
Let's give up dishwashers and electricity.
Yeah. I agree with you totally, Jane. I'm just reflecting that there still is a majority of folks right now who absolutely want to have that dominance, who want to still be on top, who want to see themselves as a superior race. How do we work within that? How do I, as a Chinese woman, listen to someone say Chinese virus and Kung flu and a year ago get accosted by a white woman or a faded black woman in a truck,
Thank you.
call me a gook, because how do I operate within that setting and still maintain a belief that it's, what do I do? How do I get over it?
Look, it's going to take care of itself. The demographics of this country say that within 30 years, white people will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. White people will be a numerical minority in the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens, and it's happening now, you look at the number of people of color who are in the House of Representatives. You look at the number of people of color that you see on television doing important things that never happened when I was a child. You look at the number of people who are in jobs of color who are in jobs that white folks never thought they would be able to do. It's going to take care of itself, and white people's lives are going to depend on, once again, but now they're going to have to admit it, on the intelligence, ambition, courage, curiosity, and creativity of people of all different color groups. That's the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't going to have a choice in the future, and we'd better get used to it now.
Mm-hmm.
We'd better
Mm-hmm.
start now to say we got rid of miscegenation, and miscegenation laws were written. Good God. If you haven't read the book, The Color of Law, get it and read it. Miscegenation laws were written by people who believed that there were 3 or 4 different races. Now think of how ignorant that is. We can't cross a cat with a dog and get a dad or a cog because they're different species. They won't reproduce. But we had been crossing people of different color groups for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And they produce brilliant, beautiful, wonderful, creative, courageous people. They have to be courageous to keep on living in this racist society.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that we can't reproduce together, and we can because we are all the same species. And if you haven't read the book, Homo sapiens, the Sapiens, you haven't read the book Sapiens, get the book Sapiens and read it. It will blow you away when you realize how really ignorant the idea of 3 different races is,
Mm-hmm.
and how much proof we have that it isn't true.
Yes.
I challenge every person watching this to get their DNA checked, take it back, get back as far as you can go, trace it back as far as you can go. And when you get it traced back as far as you can go, you whitest people that you see, you'll find out that a percentage of your DNA came from a country in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Africa isn't a country, it's a continent. But
Yes.
on the continent of Africa, there are lots of countries, and most of them are peopled by Black people. And most of you, no, every one of you will have a percentage of your DNA from a country in Africa. So now, people, get over it.
And
White
with
folks,
get over it. And we are
Get over
completely.
it.
Thank you so much, Jane Elliot. We are out of time. I'm so grateful. Thank you for coming on and sharing your very necessary education. I usually ask my guests what you're most grateful for. Can you do that in 10 seconds? What is something or someone you're... I'm sorry?
My father.
Oh,
My father is what I'm most
beautiful.
grateful for. He said, a fair thing is a pretty thing, and a right wrongs no man. And he also said, a man is judged by the company he keeps, and the best of company is none too good. Judge people by the company they keep, and then you'll know whether you want to be around them,
well,
or whether you want them as president.
I'm so glad that you are part of my company now. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on the show. Jane Elliot, this is Dr. Marissa signing out, broadcasting from UBN Studios in Burbank, California. Take my advice. I'm not using it. Get happy with Dr. Marissa. Peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. And I'm back. Wow. I am super glad that I used this as a throwback for those of you who were here yesterday, and I had announced that she was coming on live. She was, and we had a conversation yesterday, and y'all know that I don't talk about things that we cannot control right now, as passionately as we feel about it. And politics is something that I've taken a stand on for this show because, one, Hope and Happiness, which is my brand, it is accessible for all, no matter what your politics are. And two, not to talk about things that we all have no control over. So if you can read between the lines, I will have her back before voting happens again, because she wanted to talk about things that she's very passionate and has a right to be passionate about that we cannot control with regard to the current leader. So that is why her important message that continues to be important, I wanted to still highlight, and I hope that you have heard all the very, very important things that she has said. Racism is not inherited, it is learned by our children. That we are all part of the human race. We are not, there's no white. There's different shades of brown, and that's what we all are. And get over it. Certainly her message to predominantly pale-faced people who were shocked at what she did with the pale-faced children in Iowa, and yet completely, I was kind of embarrassed at the Toronto reaction that she talked about, being that I am originally from Canada, around Toronto, and that unfortunately, Moose on the Table, my Canadian version of talking about the elephant in the room, it is still like that, where, you can't do anything to our children, and yet children of color are faced with that kind of discrimination every single day. So I hope you've taken a lot of that to heart. If you haven't done the homework, which was to watch the PBS free special called A Class Divided on Frontline, please do. I think it should be required watching for every single child. And if you're a parent and you want a really great way to bring the message that discrimination and prejudice is not okay home to your children, literally, make that a required watching family movie night. All right, let's see if we have time to bring up. I've always been curious about what she said on Jimmy Fallon's show, so I am going to share this tab, and we have some time to actually watch that. I may get a copyright strike, but oh well. Here we go. Let's watch this and see what she says on Jimmy Fallon's show.
On our show, I appreciate it. For those not familiar with your work, can you explain what you do?
I separate groups of people according to the color of their eyes in order to give them some idea, white people, some idea of how it feels to be treated unfairly on the basis of a physical characteristic over which you have no control. I say I use blue eyes, brown eyes, and anybody who doesn't have blue or brown eyes simply goes in the low class. I accuse brown-eyed people, who I always put on the top of the first day, of being smarter, more worthwhile, more Christian, better human beings than blue-eyed people are, because everybody knows that blue-eyed people have too little melanin in your eyes, and so it allows too much sunlight to enter your eyes and damage your brain cells. And that's the reason blue-eyed people aren't as smart as brown-eyed people. Does that make sense to you?
No.
That's the thing that makes this exercise necessary, is the fact that we in education support the myth of one race and the myth of the rightness of whiteness.
How would you talk to or tell or ask white people to talk to each other about racism?
The first thing I ask people to do is realize that there are no white people on the face of the earth. Now, unless you are an albino, and if you want to know how that goes, then you look up Tanzania, Google Tanzania, and look at what happens to albinos in that country. It's absolutely terrifying and indecent. However, it's practically what happens to people of other color groups in the United States of America. We don't cut them in little pieces, we kill them in front of cameras. When you're going to talk to people of color, the first thing you don't say is, when I see people, I don't see people as black or brown or red or yellow. I just see people as people. And teachers in schools all over the United States say that every year. At least several teachers are saying that to their students. They say, I don't see people as black or brown or red or yellow, but they never put the word white in there because it's all right to see white, you see. And when you talk to a person of color, you have no right to say, when I see you, I don't see you black. And you have no right to say to some ugly female like me, I'm colorblind, and I've had dozens and dozens of white women walk up to me and say, I'm not racist, I'm colorblind. And I say, I knew that you were colorblind before you said it, because if you weren't colorblind, you wouldn't wear that shirt with those pants. Now, they take exception to that, and they walk away very quickly and very angrily, because I have accused them of lying to their very face. People who say to me, I don't see color, or who say to a black person, I don't see you as black, are saying, I have the freedom to deny the largest organ inch by inch on your body, which is your skin. Now, if you can't see my skin, you can't see me. It's time for people to take those phrases out of their lexicon.
When did you start the exercise? And we were third graders, right?
The day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. He had been one of our heroes of the month in February, and he was dead in April. And we were learning the Indian unit at that time. Our lesson plan for the next day was to learn the Sioux Indian prayer, which says, "O Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." I was taking the teepee that my previous third graders had made home. I was going to wash it and dry it and iron it on the living room floor. I walked in my door. The telephone was ringing. I held the phone. It was my sister. She said, "Is the television on?" I said, "No." She said, "You better turn it on." I said, "Why?" She said, "They killed him." And I said, "Who'd we kill this time?" Because we were in a killing mood at that time. And she said, "Martin Luther King Jr." And then my world stopped for about 3 seconds. And I'm sorry, but you're not supposed to get all like a soup sandwich, but whenever I remember that moment in my life, that is one of the most tearing moments in my life, because he was trying to make things better for all of us, not just for black people. And we killed him because he and Malcolm X were coming closer together. And if they had united, they would have changed this situation, make no doubt about that. So they both had to die, and they were killed. And so I had to go into my classroom the next morning and explain to my students why Martin Luther King Jr. was dead. And I didn't know how to do it. I watched television that night, and I saw Walter Cronkite interviewing three leaders of the black community. And he said to them, when our leader was killed, his widow held us together. Who's going to keep your people in line? I was shocked and dismayed that he would ask those black males that question. So I changed the channel. And there was Dan Rather saying to three leaders of the black community, don't you Negroes think you should feel sympathy for us white people because we can't feel the...
Oops. Well, unfortunately, it is time to say goodbye. So you can finish that really great interview with Jimmy Fallon, and you heard similar things. If you do finish watching that, you'll have heard what she's saying in the previous part of her interview with me, and I'm just so grateful that I did get a chance to have her on, and we will bring her on when there's something we can do in the voting for her concerns right now. And they are all of our concerns, but I made a difficult decision yesterday, but I'm determined to make this a safe place to reach as many as possible with it's all about balance. Peace in, peace out, world peace through, inner peace. So grateful. Didn't get a chance for breakfast with you all, but we'll start again tomorrow live. It's Doctors in the House with Dr. Tiffany Tate. So, in the meantime, go and have the best day ever. I'll see you tomorrow.
Take back your